Hello, thank you, Amanda, and good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us in our, what is the second webinar short flash talk series, which is targeted at demystifying some of the use of GS1 standards in healthcare and helping you understand better how the standards apply within healthcare. Thank you very much for joining us and welcome. This session is being recorded, so if you'd like to share with colleagues or listen back, you're very welcome to. And certainly if you have any questions, please put these in the question or chat box and we'll review them afterwards. Today's talk is titled "Which GTIN is this?" and it's around packaging hierarchies and explaining how this addresses some of the challenges of unit of measure when it comes to the healthcare supply chain. I'd like to introduce myself and my colleague, Amanda Crean. So Amanda Crean is our Healthcare Project Management Executive, and you'll be hearing from Amanda in a moment. And my name is Siobhan Duggan, Director of Innovation and Healthcare with GS1 Ireland. As mentioned, the title of today's talk is "Which GTIN is this?" It's a question actually that we get quite regularly as people start to understand more about GTINs and how they work. We'll talk about each box case and the language actually that applies to this and how the units of measure apply to the different levels of the hierarchy, and the benefits of identification of packaging hierarchies using the GTIN. So at this stage, I'll hand over to Amanda.
So thank you, Siobhan. Just briefly, before I start talking about packaging hierarchies, I'll quickly mention that the previous webinar in this series goes into more detail on the construction of a GTIN and the types of barcodes seen in healthcare, and that this recording is available on our website for those of you who may wish to view it afterwards. So the GTIN, the Global Trade Item Number, is used for the unique identification of healthcare products worldwide, and the GTIN is encoded in a standardized barcode to enable scanning, and the GTIN is the primary device identifier for the majority of healthcare products worldwide. A GTIN should be unique to one product and at a single packaging level. And just to touch on that it is generally the manufacturer who assigns the GTIN to each packaging level and encodes and prints the information in barcodes on the packaging. And just to note that if a distributor is repackaging products, they may be required to add a GTIN to the label. But generally it is distributors and healthcare providers who generally scan and capture the information in the barcodes to track products through the supply chain right down to the patient bedside or point of care. And using the GTIN allows for the correct identification of products at every level of the packaging hierarchy, whether that be each box or the case. So what is the packaging hierarchy? So first of all, to state that there are different types of packaging hierarchies, and so it may be represented different to what you see here. And typically a hierarchy, any hierarchy level which is priced, ordered or invoiced at any point in the supply chain should receive its own GTIN. And it is also more frequent that the single unit or the each is being scanned at the patient bedside for patient safety and traceability purposes. And the Scan for Safety program is a great example of this. And also just that GTINs are also captured across implant registries, for example, and patient records for audit and traceability purposes, and also more increasingly under regulatory requirements, such as the Falsified Medicines Directive in Europe for pharmaceuticals products, and the various different UDI or unique device identification regulations and directives across the globe. So in more simple terms, packaging hierarchy details the packaging configurations for all levels of packaging. And we see here on this slide an example of a packaging hierarchy. Starting on the left, we have a syringe, which would typically be used at the point of care. And this is referred to here as the single unit, or it may also be known as the each. And this is the lowest level in the hierarchy. And again, it is assigned its own GTIN, and which is represented here as GTIN A. Then next we have a box which contains 25 of these single units. This may be how the items arrive to the hospital warehouse or storeroom, and again has its own GTIN. Then moving further to the right, we have a case, and this contains 2 of these boxes to give a total of 50 single units, or eaches as they may also be known. And this may be what the supplier keeps in their warehouse for distribution, and they may also receive this from a distributor who is delivered a pallet from a manufacturer. And this is the last example here on the far right, and this contains 18 cases totaling 900 single units, or 36 boxes. So as we move up the hierarchy level, each level, contains a new GTIN, and as mentioned earlier, it is generally the manufacturer who is responsible for allocating the GTINs, and it is done considering various things such as the GS1 general specifications, GS1 healthcare GTIN allocation rules, country or regional regulatory requirements, or internal supply chain and tendering requirements. And just so there's a lot more in this, which we won't go into in this webinar, but for distributors and suppliers and healthcare providers, right down to scanning at the point of care, what's important to know here is that there should be a GTIN for each level of the hierarchy, and Siobhan will detail further benefits as to why with an example later in this webinar. And then before I hand back to Siobhan, I would like to briefly speak about the barcodes used in healthcare. So in our previous webinar in this series, again, I spoke in more detail about the different types of GS1 standard barcodes which are used in healthcare, but the main point here is that the GTIN may be encoded in different types of GS1 standard barcodes and may also contain additional traceability information, and that GS1 barcodes are structured in a standardized manner so that scanners and software can easily deconstruct and identify the information it needs. The data matrix, which we see here on the left of the slide underneath the scissors, the single unit of scissors. So this is the preferred barcode type for healthcare, as it can contain more traceability information in less space, and all the traceability information is captured in just one single scan. And this is where healthcare is rapidly moving to, where we have more traceability in just one beep. And then finally, just to note that most healthcare products have or are moving towards having unique product identifiers, GTINs, and other traceability information as part of various regulations and directives, and industry is working with GS1 to meet these requirements. And then just to note that a recent HSE national tender, so the HSE is our National Health Service here in Ireland, so this tender for medical consumables mandated that there must be a GTIN for each packaging level. So now I would like to hand back to Siobhan, who will speak in more detail about the benefits of using a GTIN to identify every level of packaging.
Thank you very much, Amanda. So we'll go into the next slide, which is, I suppose, the challenge misinterpretation of quantities. And this is something, I suppose, that I've seen in the last number of years of working in this area. It is the single biggest challenge within health, and which is when you order or purchase something, is to ensure you're getting the right quantity, because as we stated previously, the language around this can be different depending on each party and who you're talking to within the healthcare supply chain. And what we try to represent here, as Amanda's mentioned, is the single, the box, the case. The manufacturer code also evolves from point of manufacture right through to the hospital. So in this case, what quantity does the code refer to? That is the question. A hospital orders 1 unit, but receives 1 box of 25 single units, and this happens often, and this is where the GTINs can help address this issue. If we go to the next slide, we'll see this in a little bit more detail. So what happens when there is no GTIN? So the supplier codes can be duplicate across suppliers, and we cover that in the previous webinar. And it also can change as it moves from manufacturer to healthcare provider. This leads to misinterpretation of quantities, and also the supplier code is not globally unique and is not in a standardized barcode. So it means that the nature of track and trace is more challenging. It's more paper-based, takes more time, and this is something that a lot of healthcare providers are now moving away from for reasons of improving patient safety and also, as Amanda mentioned, for regulatory purposes. So on the next slide, we talk about, well, actually, how do you link the GTIN to this, and what are the benefits of this? So here you can see, as Amanda mentioned, that the GTIN means that you know that you're talking about a single unit, a box, or a case. In this case, the hospital scans GTIN-A at the patient bedside, and the order is replenished by 1 each, or 1 single unit. Often hospitals now will set up minimum order levels, so that, let's say, 10 of these are scanned, and then the hospital knows, okay, it's time to place an order with the supplier. So that's something that's set up in the background, but facilitated by having that hierarchy in place. So the key here is that the GTIN is always linked to a specific quantity or unit of measure. In the next slide, we then just, I suppose, highlight how that happens. So the GTIN is always linked. The GTIN identifier remains the same from manufacturer to patient, so it doesn't evolve, it doesn't change. And the UDI, or unique product identifiers, the GTINs, are printed on packaging and in a standardized barcode. So everybody within the supply chain can be set up to read those and scan those. Which makes track and trace much easier, and as we've mentioned, it's something that industry is moving to. So I suppose we've given you quite a whistle-stop tour through the challenges of hierarchies. I'd just like to cover in conclusion then. So as I've mentioned, the GTIN is the unique identifier, and it is becoming mandatory requirement in tenders. A different GTIN is required for each packaging level, and certainly if you have any questions around this, please do get back to us and talk to us about that. And what's very important to understand is that while there's work involved, this is not something that happens straight away or happens overnight. The benefits are there for everybody within the healthcare supply chain, and many of those benefits are being realised as we speak. So do talk to us if you have any questions. We are here to support whoever you are, be it a manufacturer, a distributor, or a hospital on implementation. I'll hand now back to Amanda, who'll cover the last slides, and then we'll go to some questions. Thank you. Amanda, I think you might be on mute.
Yeah. So thank you, Siobhan. So just to briefly go through a number of resources available to you on the GS1 website and other channels. So our website has a number of case studies about the implementation of GS1 standards in healthcare, some implementation guides, and as well to note that all our webinars are recorded and available to view on our website. And you can see the link here, which I will send out in a follow-up email to this webinar, along with all other links that we see here on this slide. We also send out quarterly newsletter with news updates and information on upcoming events and other relevant announcements. And we're also very active on social media. So you can see our Twitter handle here and our LinkedIn group. So you can give us a follow or join our group on LinkedIn. And also just finally to note that we do offer a number of advisory services that you can see here, and more details on these are available on our website also. And then our next webinar that we will be holding in this series is entitled How Do I Find My GTINs? So here we will aim to continue to demystify the language and give you some information on some various tools that you can use when gathering your data on your products. And then lastly, before we go to the questions, just to note that we do have a solution provider program, and thank you to all our solution providers. And again, there is more information on all of these companies on our website. So then I suppose we'll go to questions next. So there are a couple here. So Siobhan, the first one I have here is that I am a distributor and some of my products don't have a GTIN. What do I do?
Thanks, Amanda. That's a great question. A question we get very, very frequently. Yeah, so this can be challenging, obviously, if you're being required to provide GTINs to your customers, and then you look at your products and realize some don't have GTINs. I suppose the first action is to actually talk to the agent or to the manufacturer directly to understand what their plans are around assigning GTINs. There's a very good chance they already have a plan, because this is something that's being included as part of regulation around the world. So most manufacturers are aware and are already have plans in place. If they don't, certainly I'd be sharing the requirement that you have from your customers that this is something that's necessary, and work with them and help them understand why they need it, and you can certainly point to us if you wish as well. We often get involved in terms of finding the right person within that organisation to inform of local market requirements. So I suppose the first thing is to talk to your supplier, but also come to us if you have any challenges around that. We can always help you make that connection.
Thank you, Siobhan. So another interesting one here is that I use a shipping label on my pallet. Sorry, does it also need a GTIN?
Yeah, so that's the advanced class, Amanda. That's probably I suppose the key there is that typically the shipping labels are also part of the GS1 architecture of identifiers and standards. Typically a shipping label is in the GS1 world called an SSCC, so a serial shipping container code. We're seeing more and more of these types of labels on pallets now, and they're designed to cater for the way products can be moved within a healthcare supply chain. It's not something we probably have time for today to cover, but it's safe to say that the GTINs at the box, the case are the one assigned the way we spoke today, and then the SSCC, which is that pallet label, has the information around what's within the pallet. So it's certainly something we'll probably cover in future webinars, but typically that's what you see, and the GTINs are what are contained within that pallet. I hope that answered the question.
Yes, so then one last final question then, I think, before I leave it. So can an unpackaged item have a GTIN? So for example, a single unit not in a package?
Yeah, so I think you touched on this during the presentation as well. So what we are seeing, typically most products have a GTIN at the box and the case level, less so in terms of the actual individual, particularly on unpackaged products. But because the regulation is coming where, well, particularly it's already in place within the US for FDA, but also it's coming for Europe around the unique device identification. So typically, even if an item doesn't have a GTIN printed on the packaging, it can be assigned a virtual GTIN. And what we're finding is that as more and more hospitals are starting to scan they are asking their customers directly, or their suppliers directly, to assign GTINs to those products. So there are ways around it, but the reality is that it's really important that manufacturers are assigning and printing GTINs on that level, each single, whatever you call it, so that can be captured at the point of care. And there, obviously, if the packaging is a challenge, there are options to laser etch onto devices that might be used multiple times, and that's something that some manufacturers are already doing. That's obviously slightly more complicated, and in terms of regulation, a little bit further down the road. But again, something, maybe talk to us if you have any questions on that. But the key message around that is that even if it is technically not part of regulation, it's something your customers are asking for more and more. So something to be aware of and to be doing, because this is certainly a requirement. Thank you.
So thank you, Siobhan. So I think we will leave it there for this webinar, and I will send the slides and information on the next webinar and various different other links that I referenced throughout the slides in a follow-up email to all attendees. So thank you all for listening, and I hope you have a nice day.
That's great. Thank you all. Bye-bye.